From the KATC Weather Lab, here's Eric's forecast.
After many of us got a few showers yesterday afternoon, it was back to the hot and dry weather to end out the month of September, with highs getting into the lower 90s. And that heat wave will stick with us into the first part of October. But it does look like by just maybe next week, we could be looking at some fall-like weather making it into Acadiana. But looking at the big picture across the country, the heat is on not only for us here in Acadiana, but for a big portion of the country. As we can see, 90s extending from the East Coast all the way up back to the Midwest. We're looking at upper 80s. They did get into the lower 90s across portions of Iowa and up towards Chicago earlier this afternoon, but you can still see mid 90s from Montgomery back over into Texas, even as we push into the 6 o'clock hour. So some big time heat, not only for us here in Acadiana, but for a large portion of the country. That trend looks to continue for the next several days, as we still have this big area of high pressure in the upper levels, creating lots of hot and dry weather for the east portion of the country. We do see our fall trough beginning to develop in the Pacific Northwest. That's where they've been dealing with snow back through Great Falls, Montana, seeing more than 3 feet of snow over the weekend. Eventually, we'll start to see this trough get a little bit closer and eventually maybe bring us to that fall-like temperature by next week. But in the short term, that dry air in the Gulf of Mexico is keeping the tropics, at least for the Gulf, relatively quiet. Hardly to find a shower in the Gulf of Mexico, so that is the good news, as tropical activity has been on the lower side thanks to the hot and dry weather of late. Expanding this out a little bit, you do see some shower activity towards the Hispaniola and Cuba area. That's associated with an upper level low, something we will be keeping a close eye on as it does drift slowly towards the west and get into the western Caribbean, maybe gets into the lower Gulf of Mexico, maybe could send us some showers by next weekend. But for the most part, not expecting a whole lot with that. And then also in the Atlantic, we continue to have Hurricane Lorenzo with winds over 100 miles per hour. Got a little better organized today with that eye forming again this afternoon. Starting to show it strengthening a little bit with a huge wind field as tropical storm force winds extend 250 miles out from the center. And so as it moves off to the north and northeast, it's going to make a close pass by the western Azores Islands, could bring hurricane conditions to them with heavy winds and gusty rains. So we got hurricane warnings out for many of those islands, and then eventually by the end of the week could make a run for Ireland and UK as a strong post-tropical system with winds still over 50 miles per hour by Friday into Saturday. Locally, though, high pressure at the surface continues to keep us hot and dry through Wednesday. As that high drifts slightly off to the east by Thursday, we get a little bit more of that southerly flow, so maybe a slight chance for a shower Thursday afternoon, but still staying hot with temperatures in the lower 90s. By the weekend, we continue to see that high in control, but as mentioned, there's that low. Might increase the rain by Sunday into Monday as that front begins to come through, but that looks to be our fall cool front, bringing finally that cooler temperatures in across the area. So maybe by just maybe 7 to 8 days, we get some fall-like temperatures. But in the meantime, warm, muggy night, temperatures staying in the lower 70s for an overnight low. Tomorrow we get back into the lower 90s with mostly sunny skies, just a 10% chance for maybe a stray shower. And that trend continues through much of the work week and even into the weekend. But I think we're all looking down the road at that fall cool front into next week when temperatures might only be in the 70s for highs. It's coming, guys.
Finally,
it's coming.
absolutely. Thanks, Eric.